If you talk about on the nutrition side, which to me is the 80-20 of your health, look at what's being offered for food all the time. Ultra processed foods everywhere, which is literally tied to mortality. The more processed food you eat, bigger association with mortality. It's everywhere. We don't teach you how to eat too. Like a simple hack I tell everybody is protein first and enough protein. If you do that single step, if there's one piece of nutrition advice I'm going to leave people with is amp up your protein intake, because 98% of people aren't eating enough. So 0.7 gram to 1 gram per ideal body weight. You hit that metric, magic starts happening.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so collectively we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, changing the way this game is being played. And buckle up, because we got one hot guest in the seat today. We ran a long scouting report on this one, and Tracey and I are so excited to introduce you to our friend, Dr. K. Dr. K cares for critically ill patients in Ottawa Hospital's ICU and is dedicated to transforming healthcare to reduce the need for intensive care. Nationally recognized and featured in Newsweek and Vogue, Dr. K promotes health prevention and wellness. He founded Kwadwo Nutrition and co-founded Osler AI and Lionheart Innovation to create impactful healthcare strategies. Dr. K is also the author of Unapologetic Leadership and Prevention Over Prescription, which inspires values-driven leadership and well-being through passionate advocacy and innovation. Dr. K is reshaping health and wellness for future generations. You can see the alignment across the board as I tee up this incredible man. Dr. K, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Listen, ladies, after that intro, that made me feel like I should be blushing. That's a pretty majestic intro, and I can't blush. So thank you very much for having me on this incredible show that's changing the landscape of leadership and beyond.
Yes, let's get this party started, shall we? Why don't we start by helping our audience plug into some of this backstory in regards to the mission that you're on to change the way the game's being played in healthcare.
Yeah, I'll try and make it brief because it's a bit of a long story, but initially I saw early in my career how inefficient the healthcare system was. And as a result, I was seeing these healthcare cuts impact patient care. For example, I had this patient that was heavily reliant on chest physio after having a traumatic injury. And we go into a long weekend, doesn't get his chest physio, and lands back in the ICU because of that short-sightedness. And to me, that was the catalyst of this vision of what can we do to improve healthcare. And so I started off in research, developed a research optimization network, a multidisciplinary research team. And honestly, we were quite successful at producing papers. We had over 100 papers in peer-reviewed journals. But I'll tell you, Susan and Tracey, nothing changed. And like nothing was changing. You put out this paper and you think you're doing some good, but we weren't seeing any needle. The needle wasn't being pushed along. So then what really changed was doing a format like this, like start to do podcasting. As a result, start to get more, did some local news and then start to get some national attention during the pandemic. And from what I saw during the pandemic, the amount of suffering I saw for our COVID patients and links to preventable disease. So links to obesity, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and realizing that if we modified our lifestyle, if we ate better, if we leaned on prevention, man, you would stop these. Not only we're talking about the pandemic, but we talk about heart attacks, strokes, mental health, fertility, cancers. All this stuff gets improved if we become metabolically healthier. And so, and when you think about the cost, like I was always a guy that did a lot of cost research. Actually, I'll put you guys on the spot. If you had to say one COVID admission to ICU, if it cost $4,000 per admission, $12,000 per admission, $48,000 per admission, or $100,000 per admission. Which one do you think? COVID.
48. That's my
What do you,
guess.
what do you think, Tracy? Per admission. So you land in ICU because of
Yeah. What was this? It said 24 or 12? Was there
yeah.
4, 12, 48, or one something?
12?
So Susan gets a prize right there to just around $50,000 for a COVID admission. That's one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we could lean on prevention and get people healthier and avoid even a couple of those admissions, think about that cost savings. Think about that's direct cost savings. You're not talking about the time away from work. Talk about the your family members' time away from work, the amount of sacrifices and mental health disturbances and all these things that are correlated with a ICU admission. So yeah, my whole mission has been transformed to say, hey guys, let's give you the tools to prevent you from landing in hospital in the first place. Let's talk about how we eat. Let's talk about the importance of exercise. Let's talk about how we manage stress. We could talk a little bit about that pre-call here. Let's talk about the need to connect and create a community and the magic that has, the knowing what your purpose is, like tying to your why, how that affects your health. And so all this, I know everyone thinks it's odd for an ICU doc that makes a living taking care of the sickest of the sick and leads the sickest of the sick, docs doing this, to be talking about this, but to me it is so impactful if we could really leverage preventative health.
Woo! I feel like this resonates so deeply with Tracey and I. You'll hear us often say on the show, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and oftentimes we're talking about that in the context of big corp, right? In terms of getting these leaders developed in this conscious way so that when they're at the helm, right, they're doing all of these things upstream that prevent the suffering of their people downstream, right? What is it in your opinion? Because the other thing that we look at here on the show is that it seems to take pain to act as a catalyst to awaken that untapped potential, especially in the experience of high achievers, right? I have to joke that I needed to be put in the chokehold with a life-threatening disease in order to become consciously aware of my role in my health, you know? But what is up with that? Whether we're talking about in big corp in terms of the well-being of our people, right? As they're showing up and devoting so much of their time and energy and care and dedication to these missions, it's the same thing on the personal side of the fence in regards to the self-leadership around our health. So what is the blind spot? We have so much research, Dr. K, that surely proves your thesis. Where's the gap in your opinion?
So I'll answer that two ways. It's a very good question. So one, the leadership lens, like I never viewed myself doing leadership stuff. Like especially as a Black healthcare provider, you are very much in survival mode. You're not thinking about going up the ranks. You just want to get a spot, right? Like there was nobody that looked like me growing up and throughout my training, throughout even in staff jobs and boardrooms, and it took a crisis for me to step up. And we stepped up, in my opinion, in a big way, but it was very scary. Like I didn't get into it now, but the first book really was driven about some of the inequities and mismanagement I felt during the pandemic. I was not okay with seeing our kids suffer and the schools remaining closed despite everywhere else in the country having their schools open.
And can't with that.
And at that time, it was one of the, I'd say, magical moments as a family, or at least with my wife, when we sat at the kitchen table and people are asking me to speak on the news, and I'm terrified because I'm seeing docs that say the wrong thing, they're getting canceled. And so we looked at each other and say, like, what our values are. We do the right thing. We stick up for people that can't stick up for themselves. Like, that's inherent like in both sides of our family growing up. It's what we want to raise our kids to do. And so we're going to do this. And if we get canceled, you always got your family. We love you. We got your back. Get a little emotional think about it because it's like it was a defining time. And so it was not easy. Like we got a family attacks on our family online. We lost friends. We got threats to our jobs, or my job anyway. But we came out the other side, and because we leaned into that values focus, like we kept our heads up high. And like, to be honest with you, now people will come to me that were ragging on me, saying like, you know what? The kids' mental health was a concern. The lack of cancer screening was a concern. The lack of elective surgeries, that was a concern. Like, stuff that, in my opinion, were very predictable, were now being, at least some people, at least acknowledging that we set that straight. So I don't know why, I'll just speak from my own personal example, why it took a crisis to step up. But I mean, in the medical field, you learn to try and keep you humble. That's the nature of the beast. And so I think maybe that has a lot to do with it. A lot of people don't really see their potential. And, I personally didn't have much in the way of mentorship either. So, but whatever is that catalyst, as long as you lean into it, lean into those values, focus on action too, and like not sit on the sidelines, like some magical things can happen. And then the second part to your question about the health side, there's so many barriers to living a healthy life. Like, I'll be honest with you.
Let's talk about it, because that's definitely where we got to go with this conversation, right?
Yeah. Like if you talk about on the nutrition side, which to me is the 80-20 of your health, look at what's being offered for food all the time. Ultra processed foods everywhere, which is literally tied to mortality. The more processed food you eat, the bigger association with mortality. It's everywhere. We don't teach you how to eat too. Like a simple hack I tell everybody is protein first, and enough protein. If you do that single step, if there's one piece of nutrition advice I'm going to leave people with, is amp up your protein intake, because 98% of people aren't eating enough. So 0.7 gram to 1 gram per ideal body weight. You hit that metric, magic starts happening. You'll maintain your lean muscle or increase your lean muscle. You'll feel fuller. You're more energy. You're less cravey. You literally burn more calories digesting protein compared to any other food. Like, I don't know if any of you have ever had meat sweats before, but
yes,
but
I know
that's
what you're
literally,
talking about.
Million restaurants will do that to you.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh my God.
But that's literally your body trying to digest the meat. Like, that's why it's working on overdrive. That's why you're sweating. And so 15% of the calories that are assigned to that meal is literally going to digesting the food. So there's so much magic when you do that, but we don't teach that. We don't promote that. And then like the inactivity, holy cow. We know that the step counts is directly related to longevity as well. But you got a day like this, people don't feel like walking. People are more Zoom calls than ever before. Like I see, like one thing I always laugh at the gym. I go to the Altea, like this swank gym now.
Yeah.
You got escalators going up and down.
Oh,
right?
no.
My friend Warren has those escalators, and he's looking at you guys going in there all the time.
What's that?
My husband is the escalator mechanic for that.
Oh, is that right?
He's like, you should see the people going in there. It's like wild in there. It's like crazy. People are just flooding in there.
Yeah.
So there's escalators, and he says the amount of people taking escalators, are, why isn't that fixed? And they don't want to take the stairs, but they're going to the gym.
Oh my goodness.
But even when they're taking the escalator, they're not walking with the escalator.
Oh my God.
Whether it's going up or down. And I'm like, you're in a gym, son. Like, move over. I'm coming down. I'm coming up.
Move over.
It's just like, I think
totally unconsciousness, right? Like that's what we're talking about.
The amount of stress that people are going through, that's a big driver. You're not making great decisions from a place when you're stressed. And then the connection piece, like a lot of people were like this all the time. I'm sorry, for those listening, I'm pretending I'm on my phone. I mean, even my teenage son and their kid and their friends, they're all together and they're trying to be on their phone. But get off that thing. You're all together, son. Like let's go. Like put that toy down right now. And so I think there's a ton of barriers, and this is why we see, like in the US, the number they say about 13% of the population are metabolically healthy, something stupid like that. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
atrocious. Sorry, that was a
Mm-hmm.
long-winded answer, but it was needed.
Yeah, well, I remember I wrote my thesis on the childhood obesity epidemic in the States back in 2004. Generation XL, I called it, because I was just aghast when I started to run into that research, how like 1 in 4 American children are overweight statistically, and 1 in 5 are obese. And I mean, I don't think that stat's improved since 2004. I think it's actually gotten worse. And it really is a reflection on what we're up against in terms of the values of society, right? Because that really is what prevents us from being able to consciously be at the helm, making decisions that are actually best and right as it pertains to our well-being and sustainability, right? Like only 1/3 of adults is actually making it out of that, social self stage of the maturation process, which means that their values are outside in. They're being set by the world who's telling us to work harder and longer. AI's coming. You're going to lose your job. Right? Like it's just we're looking at 23% statistically, Gallup says, in terms of engagement because people's brains are taking over. Right? Like in terms of the amount of stress that modern day society tries to convince us is just part of the equation. Tracey and I, we always say it looks like striving on the outside looking in, but please believe that's surviving on the inside of your body and your nervous system.
Yeah. And I gotta say, Susan, like I've seen firsthand, like stress is a killer. Like I'm convinced of it. It's not something you learn about in medical school, but like there are some conditions. Actually, there's a one condition called stress-induced dilated cardiomyopathy, and it's a condition when if you have a loved one that suddenly passes unexpectedly.
Mhm.
What we see on occasion is that adrenaline surge that they receive with the news causes their heart to weaken, and so instead of beating regularly or with regular strength, it becomes really weak, and so people either die from it, from a weak heart, or they go into a bad rhythm that their body can't tolerate, or they end up just straight up in hospital trying to manage their heart failure. But that's literally an acute example of how stress is a killer. But I'm convinced now after seeing too many like these autoimmune conditions that spark up after a stressful response, a stressful
Event.
event. Thank you. I I've seen it with some friends and colleagues now that suddenly pass after during going through a stressful time. So this is something that I feel like we can't ignore, and
Mm-mm.
this is something that I think a lot of us too, if we're attuned to our bodies, when you're in that state. You're waking up at 3 in the morning, can't fall back asleep. That's like one of the telltale signs I always tell everybody, or sometimes people come and ask me for sleep advice. And they tell me they're waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm like, you're stressed. What's stressing you out right now? And to me, this is one of those things that we just can't ignore.
Mm-mm. No, I think this is what stimulated and catalyzed the mission for me. It was seeing my dad go into an early grave from stress, like that was very much the causation for, I believe, why he was, diagnosed with terminal cancer at such a relatively young age. It's like I saw the man working 7 days a week, like 16 hours a day, and that's not right. That's a ticking time bomb. But it's interesting that you're saying that can catalyze, autoimmune responses, because that's when my ulcerative colitis evolved into Crohn's disease, which is, I think, even a step further than the colitis in terms of severity.
Mm.
But yeah, I think this is what made me so deeply fascinated with the level of unconsciousness in our leaders. He was an entrepreneur He didn't know that he was stressed. He thought he had a good work ethic, which he did. And that was all wrapped up in pride. So good luck trying to get that man to take a day off unless I had a hockey tournament somewhere out of town. But how do we change that? Because that again was 25 years ago. And Tracey and I, we're still working with leaders day in and day out. And we believe that stress has never been higher than it is in this moment of time.
Yeah, I think this is when leaders got to shine. Like you know, I try to, this is something I learned from another lesson from my wife, but she's a psychologist, by the way. So she's like she has all these superpowers. But she really emphasized the idea of modeling, especially when it came to our kids. Like where you want to see a change in behavior, it's got to be come from within. And so as a simple example, where we talk about healthy living. So we constantly exercise with our kids, without our kids, but they see it's front and center. They see it's how we eat, how we're trying to avoid crappy foods, and that whether it's conscious or subconscious, the kids are retaining some of that. But when it comes to that stress management piece, I think you got to, as a leader anyway, you got to foster this. You got to acknowledge it. You got to recognize it's an issue, first of all. You got to recognize how strong of an impact it can have. And then you got to model a healthy existence. Like, I'll give you some examples I do with my team. So I run my ICU at the Ottawa Hospital. It was my 5th year in place. I do not encourage people to get the what we call like all the notes and notifications on their phones constantly. I tell them that I'm not answering emails past 5. I tell them that on the weekends I'm not answering emails unless it's an emergency, which you could call me. You could always call me because there's always something going on. I promote if there's had a rough night and they're supposed to be like the nature of ICU, you could start your day, for example, on Monday, I'll start my day at 7 or 7:30, and then I'm responsible till probably 5 on Tuesday, and that cycle begins. But if I see my doc had a rough night, I'll send them home at 1 o'clock. Like that's the culture we're trying to create. And we also anytime we know that one of our staff members is going through a stressful time, we will do anything that we can to offload them. You need time off. It's not like, hey, try and find somebody to cover. No, we will get that coverage. Don't even sweat it. You're in a crisis right now. We got your back. And so creating that culture, recognizing that, modeling it. I tell my staff often if I'm coming in a little late in the mornings because I'm actually coming in from a workout. I think I like to try and do something every morning, even if it's for 5 to 10 minutes. Sometimes that means you roll in a little bit later, but that's keeping me in my best form, especially as a leader that's got to make a million decisions in a day. So to me, it's like just really modeling it, being that example, and setting the tone that way.
Love that.
I love that. I have a question. So like all that stuff, and we talk about this a lot, but and some of the work that Susan does specifically, and probably your wife as well, is around like just being able to be armored up with the mindset that requires you to be self-aware, right? So you took us from being self-aware, but we know that, a lot of people actually don't know what stress looks like or why it's showing up and you may be able to diffuse it for a few hours or for that instance, but then it pops back up. And I'm speaking from a space of like, we just came off this amazing vacation, retreat, wellness, lots of reflection, lots of deep diving, lots of little girl work that I've been putting off, and like I'm hitting it. And like it's showing up, popping up every day for me. And I got to go back into doing that work because that little girl still needs lots of like love and calmness and reassurance. I do that through my self-awareness because I had an awesome coach like Susan to help me figure what's triggering my stress when I'm facing obstacles. How how do you see that maybe, and do you see that the same way we're seeing it? Because there's probably different ways to tackle it. And being, married to a psychologist, she probably has her own ways as well. But I think part of the problem I see is a lot of people don't know why this stuff's showing up for them. And they know it's showing up and they want to take care of it and they want to de-stress and they want to put it away and put it at bay, but then they never go to the root cause because that thing's coming back guaranteed if you don't actually take care of that issue that's triggering you, like the root cause of why it's triggering you, because those things are going to come up every day. We can't control who we run into and what situations come up for us, right? So do you see that as something like that you guys are digging into? Because, I totally agree with you and I'm aligned. Like leadership is around self leadership. It's about, paving the way for others. It's about being the role model and showing up every day. And I think I do that as well, really well. But I also get triggered. And I think a lot of people are doing the role modeling and doing the surface work is what I call it, kind of like, but then how about that deep work? And like, how do we get people? Because you're taking care of many people coming in, and I'm just curious, like, how do you like, or how do we, not you, but how do we get people to get really clear on where the root cause is happening and how they do need to do the work there to be that conscious leader to really kind of help themselves through the rest of their world. And I see this for our kids, right? Like I learned this whole mindset work at 48, 49. Man, when I try to teach my kids this at 14 and 19, it's like so like, oh, this is so good. If you could just nail this now, like God, you're just going to avoid so many obstacles, and you're going to be so much more powerful in your own destiny and creating your own life, and being the person that you really want to be and really living your values. A lot of us are, we've been living what our parents wanted us to live, and kind of with the conditioning that they've given us, right? So just curious, like, what are you thinking and what you see coming through your doors, and how do you think we can do more in that space to help people?
So basically how they could see, like, do the internal work
Yeah.
to
Like, do you think that's
Root cause
important?
analysis, Doc. How do we get these folks to go down to the root cause of the stress? Because
okay.
I think that's what she's saying,
Yeah.
right? Is that I think a lot of stress management, you hear about stress management all the time. It's one of those things that's become almost trite. You hear about it so much, but it is kind of surface level if we're not understanding that 95% of our choices every day are autopilot. So if we're not getting down to the root cause analysis behind those gates, right, in terms of the unconscious part of that experience, you're affecting change maybe in the temporal, in the moment, right? But not in terms of the distance. And since we're talking about changing the way the game's being played, how do we inspire our folks to get down to the root?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts. So I'm gonna preface this by saying, like, I don't think I'm that good at what you're describing, to be honest with you. Like I I know what triggers me at times. I'm a bit of a, I don't know what the word is. Like like stuff doesn't rub off my shoulders easily. If I'm being disrespected or if I'm being treated poorly, if I may, I'm often my own harshest critic. If I made a bad decision, it sits like I'm just saying this because
Hmm.
I don't want to come across like oh, I got it all figured out. Like this is something that I'm actively trying to work on. And one of the things that I've found the most helpful, as an example, is just to be as self-forgiving and self-compassionate as possible, which is once again not easy, but it's in my Rolodex of tools to try and
Hmm.
get through. The deep work on why some of this bothers you, like I mean, I think a lot of us, if we're in a position where we are responsible for a lot of people, almost all of us get some form of coaching and guidance, and that to me has been very helpful. So shout out to Tim Redpath. He's been an absolute gem for me, especially dealing with a few crises at work and so forth. So I that has been one of the tools that I think most of us, if we're really looking at root cause and how to stay grounded,
Mhm.
I think that work with a professional can be very, very helpful. And I'm sure my wife would say the same thing. But yeah, I think a lot of it is valuing, like putting some time and value in wanting to do the work, and also like scheduling less. Like I think a lot of us, like some of the most profound eh, aha moments, whether it's personal or work related, are times for me when I blocked out chunks of time to just digest, like open time. Like if you like,
Mhm.
I think as leaders, if you don't have open time in your schedule that you want to dedicate to just dwell on an issue, I think you're making a mistake. I didn't put this in the book or anything, but this is something I've been thinking. I was doing subconsciously, but now I try and do it more often. Is like after this, for example, I got nothing till 12. I am going like that's on purpose. I want to be able to kind of reflect on some of these percolating issues that I would love to just take some time to reflect on. Sometimes I jot ideas down on a notepad. Sometimes I just pace. Sometimes I'll put on some beats and pace. Sometimes I'll go for a walk and have that theme front and center. But leaders, I think it's important to have that space and capacity. Don't fill the schedule to the brim. Otherwise, I mean, that in and of itself is gonna spike your cortisol. Like when you don't have time to breathe, you know what I mean? Or go to the bathroom even. You see these guys just be like, oh, I need a bio break or whatever. I'm just going back to back. I'm like, you're not winning at life if you can't take a
Mm-mm.
piss. Do you know what I mean? Like think about that. And
Right?
once again, I'm been that guy, so don't
Yeah.
come across like I'm doing this perfectly. But
Yeah.
to me, this is some of that solution, creating some space for self-reflection and getting
Mhm.
that help professionally, and and yeah, that to me would be the highlights.
Yeah, it's impossible to be consciously at the helm if you're just reduced to rinse and repeat of your autopilot, right? Because
Mhm.
that need for speed that we talk about, that high achievers, call motivation. We're calling it stress today, folks, in case you aren't picking up what we're throwing down on this mic right now. That's hyperarousal. That's not motivation. And so, yeah, it's like really just stepping back to get conscious with it, to get some space up in the box, like outside of the play. I think that's where change lives. That's where new choice happens, right? That's where you're able to see why you're doing what you're doing in your autopilot. But yeah, if you're mostly autopilot, that's probably because you're addicted to that cortisol and adrenaline and you're calling it motivation. You're thinking that that's a necessity, and that basically reduces you to the belief that you are powerless and you have no choice. So I think this is everything we want to leave our audience to think about today is, how much space are you creating and protecting so that you actually can look at the choices that you're making in the intensity of your day to day, right? I think that's really where conscious leadership begins. That's where you actually get to see if you're showing up in alignment with your values or you're being run by the world's values. You,
And it's a good point too. And like I don't know if a lot of people have a reflective practice too. Like I have a mix at the end of the day that between like gratitude and sometimes just kind of like going over the day. Sometimes if I'm having trouble thinking about what I'm grateful for, I'll just kind of almost go through a sequential, like, what did I do today kind of thing, and then ideas pop up. But at the end of the week, I always like to look back at the week and say, like, was I aligned with my mission, my values, and so forth. So I think that's another piece for folks is do you have a reflective practice where you get to think about how you're handling things? And for some people, it might be weekly. I know, I forget who it was. One of these gurus, they say, like, look over your year at the end of the year, like it's part of the
Mhm.
practice in the new year. But having that component, I think, can be powerful.
Yeah. So anybody looking for that highlight reel exercise that Dr. K is referencing, go on back 2 episodes because that's where we landed this plane at the end of 2025. I love that we're talking about this because this is everything we're trying to tee up at the beginning of 2026, right? We believe that we're stepping into the era of conscious leadership. That's the last thing I want to ask you, sir, while we have you in studio. You know, everybody out in the ethers is predicting that we're about to go through the most accelerated rate of growth and thus change that we have seen since the arrival of the internet. And we know with all of that acceleration of change, we know the impact that has to the amygdala, right? Or it can have to the amygdala because, yeah, change represents uncertainty. So if we are not consciously at the helm and our amygdala is triggering us into that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn stress response, then we're not going to be able to adapt. We're not going to be able to find the hidden opportunities for growth buried in the adversity of change and disruption. So, what are your final thoughts for our audience in regards to what you believe to be the most important aspect of that work for 2026 and beyond for our leaders?
That's a good question. You might not like the answer, but I'm I said get excited, be optimistic, be embrace this because this is an era where I truly believe you're going to see some transformative change, but there's opportunity here. And I think when we're coming from a place of fear, we are going to be less creative. And you've never in our existence had more opportunities than now with the advent of AI. Like I'll tell you, like I use AI every day. I'm about just random number 50% more productive than I ever have been. The way I use it, I think of more ideas. I sometimes use it as a life coach. Like there's a lot of use cases on how you can amp up your productivity and and leveraging. Obviously, it has some downsides that a lot of people talk about, but to me, if you really want to be ahead and really want to be an impactful leader, embrace it because it's coming and leverage it in a way that's aligned with your values and you will see magic happen. I've already seen magic happen as a result, and everything is just going to be better. And if you're one of those people that have a job that's going to be threatened by it, and like in the medical field, I'll tell you, it's going to be years, but radiologist, pathologist, some dermatologist, maybe, like your job will be less significant because AI is going to be able to read an x-ray better than any human. Like that's going to come. And so how do you pivot? How do you think outside the box so you stay relevant? Maybe you start one of those companies. Maybe you are a firm that now confirms what the x-ray shows. Maybe you are part of quality control. Like these are just, I'm just thinking of these on the cuff here, but ultimately, I think if you're coming from a place of fear, which is normal, if you're in a position where, I don't know, like online marketing, a marketer, even that something as simple as that, accountant, you're not going to need an accountant anymore. Lawyer at some point, like depending on what you're doing as a lawyer, a lot of these jobs are going to be obsolete. So how you pivot? Are you going to be an entrepreneur? Are you going to think like embrace it so that you are that much further ahead? Because if I ask myself, one of the most important aspects of being a leader is being agile. You do not want to be BlackBerry. You don't want to be Blockbuster. You gotta accept what's in front of you and create that change. Otherwise, you'll be left behind.
Yeah, you can't pivot or adapt unless you're able to find that which is in your control. And when you're a leader, you should know that the only constant is change, especially in big business in 2026.
And can I add one more piece to it?
Yes,
Like
please.
the healthcare side, I think to me, this is where the AI side to me is really exciting. People will be like, the healthcare is going to change for the better. Like people are going to be you're going to be able to come to your doctor in I don't know how many years, and you'll have your diagnosis already. You will know exactly what's wrong with you because and the AI already, like there's some platforms like Glass Health that are really good at diagnosing things. And so this is powerful. It increases access. It equalizes things for people. It enhances speed. Like there's a lot of upside when it comes to health, and there's a lot of opportunity too, folks. So this is why I think for our surgical wait times, for our long emerge wait times, for the lack of primary care, technology to me can actually help enhance all these constraints. So this is why I get pretty stoked about talking about this.
What a drastic difference when you're looking through the filters of fear, right? Versus this creative filter that you just described in terms of seeing all the opportunities that exist through things like AI, And I think that is where we want to land the plane, is that because that being creative thing requires you to learn how to step to that helm consciously, right? And that really starts by addressing where it is that your amygdala is waking up and what it is that's triggering that stress, so that you actually can do that inner work to adjust the filter, AKA the perspective, the mindset. I think this is why we believe that this really is going to compel and require conscious leadership. Dr. K, we knew this was going to be so freaking good for everybody who's looking to find you and continue this conversation, which we know they will. Where would you like them to reach out and connect with you, sir?
Once again, thanks for you guys doing this important work. We are lacking strong leadership these days, and this is where people need to land for real. But if they want to learn more about us, drkwadwo.ca, so drkwadwo.ca has free content on, like we have a free PDF on our book, a lot of content on healthy living, a link to our supplement line, a link to our social, which we're at Quadcast, KWADCAST on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, X, TikTok, wherever you find your social media. And the books you could also find on Amazon.
We'll make sure all of that is listed in the show notes, of course. His books, Unapologetic Leadership and Prevention Over Prescription. Y'all better make sure you catch your copy of that. Tracey, any final words for our folks before we let them go?
No, I want to say thanks for coming out, Dr. K. And I feel super inspired and encouraged about our healthcare after listening to you. And I love how you guys AI is playing such a big role, and I'm so encouraged to hear that things are going to improve. And being, in Gatineau, Ottawa, I use your services, so I am super hopeful, and I love seeing leaders like you. And I hope that I'm sure you have an impact on the people you work with, and that you're inspiring others to show up in the same way you are, because you guys do a lot of hard work taking care of all of us, and I love to see leaders like you in the healthcare stepping up into this and helping us kind of like prevention over, prescription. So I love that. So let's get into that. Now you inspire me, and it's 2026 and I have all these commitments I need to do, and which is eating and healthy, taking care of myself. And now I feel like this is just so great that you're stepping up and encouraging everybody to do that. So thank you for your work.
You got this, Tracey. You got it. Both of y'all got it.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah. Let's go.
I love it.
And the final attitude of gratitude we want to land this plane on is always thank you to our crew, our folks, our audience. Thank you for tuning in and helping us spread this episode as far and wide as we possibly can. Our ability to adapt and co-create and create this new conscious world, right? We all get to thrive rather than just strive to survive. This really is a co-creative exercise. We couldn't do any of it without you. So thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out the locker room door. Thank you, Dr. K, and we will see you all next week.